Coach Wheeler, can you suggest us how to fix childhood neglect in adulthood?
How to fix childhood neglect in adulthood. That's a tricky one because I think, if you have some childhood neglect and things that happened to you as a child, um, your mind would have developed with yourself. So you wouldn't have had that family support. And generally, what happens when you do that is you almost catastrophize everything because you're left to deal with it yourself. So you don't have anyone to reassure you. You don't have, loving parents there to support you, to show you the ways, So if you do something wrong or you push a limit, it means nothing to you. You're kind of like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. And almost when things go wrong, you have no one there to tell you that it's not as bad as you think it is. Because sometimes as a child, you can fall off and cut your knee and think it's the end of the world. And your parents will say, look, it's fine, it's just a cut. We can bandage it up, we can clean it up, we'll make it better, we'll kiss it better, and you're going to be fine. So I think sometimes you can catastrophize it. That's what they called it. And it almost links to trauma, or it does link to trauma. It's a form of trauma. And if you don't, pain that isn't transformed will almost always be transmitted. So unless you learn to resolve that, unless you learn to change that as an adult and take responsibility for the life that you were given, not the life that you led, because you had no choice over that. It was kind of forced upon you. So even though it seems unfair and it can seem unjust, it is your responsibility, sadly, to kind of bring yourself out of that and try to reset your mindset. Because not having parents there in those critical moments can lead you to sometimes later on in life having these defenses and these insecurities and these limiting beliefs or these learned helplessness that kind of limit what you're capable of as an adult, because you still have that child mindset. And it's almost like your patterns and your reactions and your emotions are built from those times. So let's say you were 7 years old and something bad happened to you at 7. If you don't have the support from your family, if you were neglected as a child and almost abandoned, you don't have them to reassure you. So you learn your response yourself. And as a 7-year-old, it's unfair to ask a 7-year-old to rationalize something that would have happened to them and to have a comprehensive, fair way of building that response to that situation. And if you were never corrected, if a parent didn't help you and show you and guide you to the right ways and say, listen, in that situation you should do this, or you shouldn't let that happen, or it wasn't your fault, or it's not as bad as it seems, this has happened, we'll protect you, we'll look after you. You don't know that, so you learn your own way of doing it. And as a 7-year-old, you don't have any experience, you don't have any knowledge or depth or a mind, a pool of knowledge to use the resources from. So you catastrophize things, and it can be 10 times worse than it actually is. And if you take that pattern with you into adulthood, it's 10 times worse than what it should be. Do you see what I mean? Because the patterns were built from a 7-year-old and you haven't learned to change them. Whereas if as a 7-year-old, something you go through and your parents are there to teach you and reassure you and help you and guide you, you learn. And then as an 8-year-old, it gets better. And then as a 9-year-old, it increases. And then by the time you're in your teenage years, you think, yeah, I remember I learned that when I was 7. Dad told me this, Mum told me that, my auntie reassured me. And you build that experience and that knowledge. It's the same when you're as a kid. Your parents say, don't put your hand in the fire. You kind of think, okay, well, that red sparkly thing is, it looks inviting, it looks thing. Then you get near it and they're like, no, don't touch it. You go near it and it's like hot. You're like, oh yeah, my parents were right. It reassures you. Do you see? It's like you build that experience with your parents. So if you were neglected as a child and that's taken away from you, you have that void of knowledge that leaves you empty-handed. And then later on in your adult life, you might not even realize it, but you're in a similar situation. You're in under that traumatic stress, a situation that puts you under pressure, and you panic and you resort and you go back to that pattern that you created as a 7-year-old, and it doesn't help you. It doesn't bring you that sense of compassion, or that sense of, not sense of compassion, that's the wrong word, but it doesn't bring you that sense of relief. And you can overreact to it or underreact to it. It can be the opposite way, where you underreact to it and someone takes advantage of you, or you get mugged off in a situation that you shouldn't do. So, and how to combat that is to try to look at those things maybe in the cold light of day and think to yourself, look at your values, look at your human needs, and look at sometimes in those traumatic situations where maybe you made a mistake in an argument, or maybe in a situation you said the wrong thing, or you reacted a certain way, and try to look back at your values and think, okay, what didn't I, I'm mindful that I didn't have parents. My parents neglected me. They kind of abandoned me. They left me for dead in a sense. They were there, but they weren't there, and they kind of just left me to get on with my own life. Is to look at it and think, okay, in that situation, what might have I missed? And look back and try to train yourself for better reactions. Think to yourself what those situations might be. And it'll take a little bit of work. It's not easy. And you might need someone's help, maybe a loving partner or a sister or a brother, someone who's close to you, or a really close friend that could maybe has a similar experience that's maybe learned something, or a trained professional, a life coach or a therapist or a counsellor, or someone that might be able to help you look at those and restructure your patterns and your frameworks for better responses as an adult, so you can have a more centered, balanced life. So that would be my advice. So I hope that helps. Look forward to more tips from Coach Wheeler, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Peace.